They say there are stories that should never be told at night, tales that open doors not meant to be opened, stories that don't just scare you, but stay with you, lurking in your dreams, whispering when you're alone. If you're brave enough to listen, then remember this: you were warned. This is not just one of those stories. This is 100. But before we dive into the chilling encounters and paranormal truths that defy reason, let me tell you about someone who thought darkness was just a myth until it swallowed her whole. Her name is Lyra. She was born in the outskirts of a small town in the province, a place where the air was still thick with old superstitions, where people still believed in Tikbalang, a swang, and spirits that live in trees. But no matter how many times Lyra's Lola warned her not to roam after sunset, she always believed the real monsters were the ones she saw in the daylight. Poverty was all she knew. Lyra grew up in a makeshift kubo held together by rusted nails and prayers. Her mother left when she was 5, and her father, well, he was never really there, even when he was. Most days, Lyra scavenged through neighbors' basurahin just to find something she could sell: plastic bottles, metal scraps, anything. Her classmates teased her for the holes in her uniform. The teachers barely noticed her. She was invisible, until she wasn't. It started the week she turned 17. One ordinary morning, while sweeping the dusty floor of their hut, she found something unusual beneath a loose bamboo plank. An old leather-bound notebook, brittle and stained, like it had been buried for years. But it wasn't hers. She had never seen it before. The pages were filled with handwritten stories, short tales of people disappearing, children speaking in strange tongues, and homes being swallowed by shadows. Each story was dated, and eerily enough, all of them were marked as true accounts. At first, Lyra thought maybe her Lola was writing these during her spare time. But when she asked, the old woman turned pale and demanded she burn the notebook immediately. That night, Lola locked herself in her room and began praying loudly, whispering in old Tagalog words that Lyra barely understood. But Lyra couldn't let it go. Something about the stories pulled her in. She shared the notebook with her one and only friend, Miko. He was the kind of guy who made dark days lighter, or at least tried. They'd been friends since grade school. He was the only one who didn't judge her for being poor or strange. Whenever she felt invisible, he saw her. And for that, Lyra trusted him. Miko laughed it off at first, saying the stories were just Lola's attempt at writing horror fiction. But as they read further, his laughter faded, because the stories started to mirror things happening around them. One entry told of a woman who saw a figure outside her window every night at exactly 2:33 a.m., a figure that smiled with too many teeth. 2 nights later, Lyra awoke to find her small curtains swaying and a tall shadow standing still just beyond the bamboo walls. Another story described a baby born with black eyes who spoke in a man's voice. A week later, a neighbor gave birth to a child who wouldn't stop crying until the priest came to bless the house. Coincidences, Miko said, but Lyra wasn't so sure anymore. Each story seemed more violent, more real. And with each page turned, the temperature in the room dropped. The shadows grew darker. The silence felt heavier. Then came the story dated next week. The page was half torn, but the few lines still readable sent chills down Lyra's spine. She found the truth in the stories. And so, the stories found her. On the night of the 100th page, she vanished, just like the rest. That was when Lyra counted the entries. 99. The 100th page was blank. It was supposed to be written soon. She tried to ignore it, told herself she was imagining things. But even during daylight, she began hearing footsteps behind her, whispers in the rice fields. At night, her dreams bled into reality. Visions of people screaming without mouths, rooms filled with eyes blinking from the walls, and a red door that pulsed like a heartbeat. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. Miko noticed, of course. He tried to joke about it, like he always did. Invited her to go biking near the river, just like old times. And for a moment, Lyra laughed. For the first time in weeks, she felt okay. But just as they reached the bend near the Nara trees, Lyra saw it. There, by the riverbank, stood a figure. Not quite a man. Not quite a shadow. Its face was featureless, smooth like stone. But its head slowly tilted, following their every move. And even though it had no eyes, Lyra felt its gaze digging into her skin. She turned to Miko. "Did you see that?" she asked, voice shaking. But Miko didn't answer. He was staring ahead, frozen. "Let's go back," she said. Still, no response. And then she noticed Miko's shadow was missing. That night, Lyra didn't go home. She stayed inside the church, begging for answers, clutching the notebook to her chest. The priest refused to believe her, said she was just tired, that she needed sleep. But the notebook had changed. The blank 100th page was no longer empty. There were new words now, scribbled in her own handwriting, though she swore she had never written them. "You were warned, and now the story begins. Yours is the first of 100 more." And then silence. The air in the church turned thick like breathing underwater. The lights flickered. A wind swept through the closed windows. And in the corner of the room, behind the altar, something moved. Lyra turned slowly. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear nothing else. Then a whisper, not in her ear, but inside her skull. "Are you ready to listen now?" This is where it begins. 100 stories, 100 encounters, each one more terrifying than the last. And if you're still here, still listening, then maybe you're already part of the next one. Lyra couldn't move. Her breath was stuck in her throat, and her legs felt like stone. The church grew darker, as if something ancient and heavy had awakened. The whisper inside her skull still echoed, soft but sharp, like a needle pressed against her thoughts. "Are you ready to listen now?" Then just as quickly the feeling faded. The wind stopped. The lights returned. The silence was deafening. Lyra looked down at the notebook again, trembling. The words had vanished. The page was blank once more. She didn't know how she got home that night. Her feet carried her through the darkness, past the rustling trees and the dirt roads soaked with rain. Her mind was elsewhere, turning over the whispers, the shadows, and the chilling sight of Miko's missing shadow. But home didn't feel like home anymore. When she stepped inside their hut, her Lola was waiting by the candlelight, eyes swollen from crying. In her wrinkled hands, she held an old, faded photo. Lyra had never seen it before. It showed a younger version of her Lola, a man beside her, and a baby, Lyra's mother. But there was something strange. The background of the photo was a forest, dark and ancient. And just behind them, something blurry, something tall with glowing eyes. Her Lola didn't say anything. She just handed Lyra the photo, crossed herself, and whispered, "You shouldn't have read it, Apo. The stories, they follow blood." Lyra wanted to ask what she meant, but her Lola refused to speak further. Instead, she lit 3 candles and began chanting prayers. That night, Lyra dreamed of the red door again, closer this time. She could almost touch it. She could hear something behind it breathing. The next day, Miko didn't show up at school, nor the day after that. His house was locked. His mother said he left early in the morning and never came back. No one believed Lyra when she said he might have been taken. They thought she was making it up, just like the stories in that notebook. But the truth? It was darker than anyone could imagine. Lyra's search for answers led her to an old man who lived near the edge of the forest, Tarai Igo, the village albulario. Most of the younger folks thought he was crazy, but the elders still brought him offerings during Holy Week. They said he could see things, feel things. When Lyra visited him, she didn't expect him to know her name. "You have your mother's eyes," he said, without turning. but your spirit is marked. He led her to a small altar filled with dried herbs, old bones, and a wooden bowl stained black from smoke. There, he revealed what no one else would say. You come from a line once blessed with Pananjin, the sight. Your great-grandmother was a Bante, a guardian who could see the spirits walking in the world of the living. But she broke the vow. Lyra asked, "What vow?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he opened a dusty chest and took out something wrapped in old cloth. When he unwrapped it, Lyra saw a shimmering shell, like a kabibi, but no sea shell she had ever seen. It pulsed faintly with a soft blue glow, almost alive. "This is a Mutiaing Daggett," he said, "an heirloom from the old world, passed from one Bante to another. It gives you protection and power, but it also attracts darkness." Lyra reached for it, and the moment her fingers touched the Mutia, she saw flashes, blinding visions of her mother, running through a storm, carrying something. A cry, blood on the trees, a red door opening, then blackness. She gasped and pulled her hand away. "You saw it, didn't you?" Tadai Igo whispered. "The curse isn't just around you, it's inside you." According to the Albulario, Lyra's mother had once been chosen to inherit the gift. But she ran, refused the burden. And because of that, the curse found another way, through her child. "Now, the Aswangs want the gift," he continued. "Not to destroy it, but to twist it. If they get to you before you awaken fully, they'll turn you into one of them. A weapon against the world." Lyra couldn't believe what she was hearing. Aswangs? Magic? Guardians? But deep inside, something told her it was true. The dreams, the notebook, Miko, it was all connected. And then Tadai Igo gave her a warning. "Tonight, they'll test you. They'll come, not as monsters, but as memories. Do not trust what you see. Do not open the red door." That evening, back at her hut, the wind held again. Lola was gone. The candles were cold. Everything felt wrong. Then the notebook opened by itself. The pages flipped violently, stopping on the 100th page. New writing appeared, this time in red ink. "He's not missing. He's waiting. Follow the path of the shadow. The door is near." The walls of the hut began to creak. The floor trembled, and through the thin bamboo walls, Lyra could hear soft laughter and someone calling her name in Miko's voice. She held the Mutia tightly and whispered prayers, but the voice only grew louder. "Lyra, it's me. I'm cold. I am scared. Please help me." Tears rolled down her cheeks. It sounded just like him. Every word, every breath. But deep in her gut, she knew that was not Miko. Suddenly, the back wall of the hut began to rot before her eyes, black mold crawling across it like veins. Then it split open, revealing a path of red earth and twisted trees, glowing slightly, as if under moonlight. At the end of that path stood the red door. It was open just a little. Behind her, the notebook shook violently, as if it were alive. The words on the last page changed again. "You cannot run from your blood. Choose the path, or be consumed." And then everything fell silent. No wind, no voice, just Lyra, the pulsing Mutia in her hand, and the red door calling to her from the darkness. She knew this wasn't just about her anymore. Something was coming, something ancient, and if she didn't face it, it would devour everything she loved. But how do you fight an enemy you can't see? How do you stop a curse that runs in your blood? This is only the beginning. Lyra's journey into the world of the unseen has started. But what lies beyond that red door? Who is waiting on the other side? Lyra didn't sleep that night. She just sat there, curled up in the corner of their hut, her back against the wall, her fingers still tightly wrapped around the glowing Mutia. The red door had vanished again, but the path, the voice, the smell of decay, they stayed with her. She could still feel it inside her chest, like a second heartbeat. A warning, or a countdown. But the worst part wasn't the fear, it was the silence that followed. Her Lola hadn't returned, and the emptiness of the house gnawed at her slowly, like termites in old wood. She waited until sunrise, thinking maybe her Lola would come back with herbs, or maybe she had gone to church. But as the light came in through the bamboo slits and the chickens outside began their morning cries, no footsteps came. No whispers, no warmth. Lyra stepped outside, barefoot, her clothes still damp from the night before. The neighbors glanced at her with quiet curiosity, but said nothing. A few even avoided her gaze. Something had changed. She felt it, like she was now carrying something heavy that others could see but not name. As if the curse inside her was bleeding into the air. She tried to ask around about her Lola, but no one had seen her. Not even Aling Faye, who usually chatted with her every morning at the well. It didn't make sense. Lola never left without saying anything. She was old, weak in the knees. She never even went to the next barangay unless someone accompanied her. Lyra walked to the small church again, hoping maybe she was praying there. But as soon as she stepped through the arch, her heart dropped. There, on one of the pews, was her Lola's rosary. Broken, scattered beads lay on the wooden floor like teardrops frozen in time. Lyra dropped to her knees, picking them up with trembling hands. She didn't know what to feel. Was her Lola taken? Did she walk into the red door? Or had she known something that Lyra didn't? Suddenly, a sharp pain struck her chest, like a memory trying to break through. She remembered being little, barely 5 years old, crying in the middle of the night. Her mother was screaming, not from pain, but from rage. There were voices arguing outside the hut. Her Lola yelling, her mother crying, and then silence. That was the last night she ever saw her mother. All these years, she believed her mother had died in childbirth, like her Lola said. But now, it didn't feel true anymore. Was her Lola hiding something? Was her entire life a lie? Lyra stood up, her body shaking. The weight of everything was crashing down on her. Miko was gone. Her Lola was missing. Her past was breaking apart. And somewhere in the darkness, something was watching. That afternoon, she went back to Tadaigo. She needed answers. But the albulario's hut was half-burned. Charred symbols covered the outside walls. A strange bitter scent filled the air, like dried blood and burnt salt. Inside it was quiet. She found him slumped over his altar, breathing weakly, clutching his side. His eyes were barely open, but when he saw her, he tried to speak. They know you're awakening," he whispered. "One of them came last night. A Penangle. She wore your mother's face." "Lida Froze. My mother." He nodded slowly, wincing in pain. "They trick the heart. Use memory as weapon. That's how they get inside." He handed her something wrapped in banana leaves, another object of power. This time, it was a small carved figure, like a baby made of black stone with red eyes. "She's still out there," he added, "but not the way you remember." Then his breathing grew shallow, and his hand slipped from hers. He was gone. Lyra stared at the carved figure in her palm. The anting felt warm, almost like it was alive. It pulsed with a rhythm, and with every beat, she felt more confused, more angry. Why had no one told her? Why did everyone lie? She walked through the village like a ghost, her mind spinning. For the first time in her life, she felt completely alone. Her friend was gone. Her Lola was missing. Her mother might not even be dead. And now, she had to fight monsters? She didn't ask for this. She didn't want this. That night, as she lay on the woven mat, staring at the cracked ceiling, she remembered how her Lola used to sing her to sleep. That gentle humming, soft and slow. But this time, the humming didn't come from memory. It came from outside. Lyra sat up. The hut was dark, the candle already dead. She reached for the mutya and held it close. Then she heard footsteps. Soft, vet, dripping. Something, or someone, was standing just beyond the door. She didn't move. She barely breathed. Then she heard it. Anik, her mother's voice. Sweet. Familiar. So full of warmth. Anik, it's me. I came back. I'm sorry. Lyra's hands began to shake. Her throat tightened. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't listen. The voice continued. I never wanted to leave you. They made me. I had to protect you. Let me in, Anik. The bamboo door began to creak open by itself. The candle sparked back to life on its own. And there, half lit by the dim flame, stood a woman. Hair matted, eyes dull, skin pale like wax. But the face was unmistakable. It was her mother. Lyra felt her knees give out. But then, something inside her screamed. Not with fear, but with truth. This wasn't her mother. It was a copy, a mask, a predator. The mutia in her hand suddenly glowed brighter, burning her palm, but also pushing back the illusion. The woman hissed, her face twisting into something sharp and blackened. Wings stretched out from her back. Her mouth split into a long grin filled with fangs. A penangle. She lunged forward, but the glow of the mutia blasted her back. She screeched and disappeared into smoke, leaving behind a smell of rot and ashes. Lyra kollapset sobbing. She had almost believed it, almost let the enemy inside. Now, she understood what Tata Iago meant. The Aswangs don't just kill. They break you. From the inside. Through love. Through memory. Through lies. The next morning, she stood on the cliffside behind their barangay, watching the sea. She held the mutia in one hand and the black anting in the other. The two objects of power pulsed differently. One warm and soft, the other heavy and dark. She didn't know yet which side she was meant to walk. But she knew this. The red door wasn't just a symbol. It was a choice, a passage between what was and what must be. And very soon, she would have to choose. To fight back. The sky above Lyra's village no longer looked the same. It had taken on a grayish hue, like something thick and ancient was pressing against the clouds. Even the air smelled heavier, like burnt wood, rusted metal, and something rotting deep in the soil. The ocean, once blue and full of life, was now murky. Dead fish began washing ashore. Birds stopped singing. Dogs refused to bark at night. Everyone could feel it, but no one wanted to say anything, because to speak it out loud would make it real. Lyra stood by the shoreline, clutching both the mutia and the black anting. Her palms were calloused now, her eyes deeper, haunted by the things she had seen. She hadn't fully rested in days. Sleep was no longer safe, but still she stood, waiting, training, remembering every lesson the Albulario taught her before he died, remembering every warning, every chant, every sign. Your blood, he had whispered once, carries the curse, but also the key. She didn't understand it then. Now, she was starting to. Her mother had been part of them. Maybe not fully, but enough to carry the darkness in her veins. That darkness now lived in Lyra too. The red door, whatever it truly was, wasn't just a threat. It was a calling. And soon it would open again. But this time, Lyra wouldn't be caught off guard. She heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw him. Miko, alive, changed. He had returned the night before, dirty, pale, exhausted, but alive. He said he woke up near the cemetery, with strange markings burned into his skin. His memory was foggy. He couldn't explain how he escaped. But he had dreams. Dreams of fire, of screaming, of Lyra. I saw you, he said. You were holding a blade made of bone. You were crying. Lyra didn't know what the dream meant, but something inside her told her it was real. Since then, Miko never left her side. He helped her gather herbs, create sigils, draw protective circles with salt and coal. He kept watch while she meditated under the old bolete tree. listening for whispers from the spirit world. And though his jokes were fewer now, and his laughter weaker, he gave her something she desperately needed: hope. Still, both of them knew the enemy was moving. Signs were everywhere. One afternoon, the church bell rang without anyone pulling it. The priest was found unconscious, his eyes rolled back, mouth filled with sand. Chickens laid eggs with black shells. A baby was born with no eyes. A farmer was dragged into the fields by something invisible, his screams echoing until they stopped suddenly. The red door appeared again, but this time it stayed longer. It stood in the middle of the rice field, tall and unmoving, glowing faintly under the full moon. No one dared go near it. Lyra felt it pull her, like it was breathing, alive, watching. She knew they were preparing. The Aswangs weren't just hiding anymore. They were getting ready. Something big was coming. She and Miko worked day and night, building traps, collecting sacred ash, chanting old prayers they found in the Albulario's burned notebook. Lyra even visited the oldest woman in the next barangay, Aling Doria, who was rumored to once serve a Dewata. The woman was blind, but when she touched Lyra's face, she smiled with sadness. "You are the storm before the cleansing," she whispered. But storms break everything. That stayed with Lyra. Every step she took after that felt heavier. She didn't know what kind of storm she was meant to be. Would she save her village or destroy it? One night, as she tried to rest inside the hut, she dreamed of her Lola. This time, she was real, not an illusion. She stood in a garden of bones, holding a lantern made of fireflies. She smiled, but her eyes were teary. "Forgive me," her Lola whispered. "I hid the truth to protect you." "What truth?" Lyra asked. But before the answer came, the dream cracked like glass. She woke up gasping. The hut was shaking. Outside, the wind howled like 1,000 screams. Miko burst in through the door, blood on his arm. "They're here," he said. "Not all of them, but scouts, testing the ground." They ran into the woods, toward the bolete tree. And there, hanging from its twisted branches, were 3 tikbalang, their faces horse-like, their limbs long and wrong. They watched in silence. When Lyra stepped forward with the Mutia, the middle one spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Your blood calls to us. You are not enemy. You are sister." "I'm not your sister," Lyra said. "You will be," it replied, "when the door opens fully." Then they vanished. Miko pulled her away, shaking. "Why are they calling you that?" he asked. Lyra didn't answer. She didn't know. Or maybe she did, but was too afraid to admit it. She was changing, faster than she could handle. Some nights, she could hear things before they were spoken, smell emotions in the air, see glimpses of people's fears. Her fingers burned when she held the Mutia too long. Her reflection sometimes blinked twice when she only blinked once. She was becoming something else, and yet she still clung to who she was. A girl who once fetched water, who played by the riverside, who laughed with Miko, who was held by her Lola's arms during typhoons. She didn't want to lose that, but the war coming didn't care about feelings. The last sign came 3 days later. The moon turned red, not just red like blood, but red like the door. The sky darkened at noon. Birds flew in circles, disoriented. Children cried for no reason. And in the middle of the village square, the earth cracked open, and a hand reached out. Not a human hand. Something else. Something ancient. It didn't rise fully. Just a warning. A sample. Lyra stood there, people screaming around her, and whispered, "It's starting." That night, she and Miko climbed the mountain trail to the old abandoned watchtower, where they could see the whole village. They brought everything: Mutia, anting, herbs, blades, salt, and courage. "We might not win," Miko said, staring at the horizon. Lyra nodded. "We might not live. Do you still want to do this?" She looked at him. I have to. This is my home. And then she took his hand. The wind blew stronger. The trees below swayed like they were afraid. In the far distance, they saw it. The red glow. The door was wide open. Lyra could barely breathe. From the top of the old watchtower, she watched as the red door remained open, wide and pulsing like a heartbeat. It gave off a low hum like a drum being played under the ground. She felt it vibrating through the stones, through her feet, all the way to her chest. Miko was silent beside her. His jaw was clenched. Both of them knew what this meant. The enemy was no longer hiding. But what shook Lyra the most wasn't the door. It was what came out of it. Not a swangs, not Tikbalang, not anything she had prepared for. It was a woman who looked exactly like her. Same face, same eyes, even the scar above the left eyebrow she got when she fell from a tree as a child. But this version of her was dressed in black, with skin too pale and eyes that glowed slightly red. And when she stepped out of the door, all the creatures around her bowed. Lyra staggered back, heart racing. "Did you see that?" she asked, voice shaking. Miko nodded, his eyes wide with fear. That was you," he whispered. "No," Lyra said, clutching her mutia. "That was something else." But deep down, something cold crawled inside her chest. Because a part of her knew. It wasn't just something that looked like her. It was her. Or at least, a part of her that had been lost. Forgotten. Buried deep. The old Albulario once said, "You are the storm before the cleansing." Now it made sense. She wasn't just meant to fight the darkness. She was born from it. Suddenly, Lyra's hands began to shake. Her mutia pulsed like it was warning her. Or worse, reacting to what was coming. She and Miko hurried down from the tower, heading back to the village, but the path seemed longer, darker, heavier. The trees leaned in closer, and the air was colder than it should be. And then they were ambushed. Shadow-like figures, not solid, not smoke, rushed from the sides. Fast, hissing, clawing at the air. Miko pulled Lyra down just in time as one passed inches above her head. She shouted a protection chant, holding up her anting, and a flash of light sent the shadows scattering. But not before one of them scratched Miko's arm. His scream froze her. Blood dripped. But more than that, something black leaked from the wound. No, Lyra whispered. She grabbed him and chanted again, pressing herbs against the cut, trying to stop the spreading darkness. It hissed like hot oil. Miko gritted his teeth. "It burns," he groaned. "We have to go. Now." They ran through the forest, barely making it back to Lyra's hut before night fully fell. Inside, she worked quickly, binding his arm, lighting protective candles, placing salt at every entrance. Miko was pale, sweating, his breath short. This wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered to herself. But things were already spiraling out of control. That night, she dreamed again. She was standing inside the red door. It wasn't a place, it was a realm. Dark, endless, filled with whispers. All around her were mirrors, floating in the air, showing different versions of herself. Angry, sad, monstrous, lost. One mirror cracked, and her reflection stepped out. It was the woman from earlier. The same face. But this time she spoke. "You're not ready," she said. "You still believe you're good?" "I am," Lyra answered. The reflection laughed. "Then why do you carry the curse? Why did they fear you since birth? Why did your mother leave you?" Lyra wanted to scream, but her voice was gone. The woman came closer. "We are the same. You and I. The door opens for us." Then, everything exploded in red light. She woke up screaming. Miko jolted up beside her, coughing. "I saw her too," he whispered. Lyra's blood ran cold. They both saw the same dream. The connection was deeper than she imagined. But she didn't have time to process it. Outside, the wind howled again. A knock. Not a loud bang. Just a soft, slow knock on the door. She looked at Miko. He shook his head. "No one should know we're here." Another knock. Then a voice. Anik. Lyra froze. That voice. It was her mother. She rushed to the door and flung it open. No one was there. Just a piece of cloth on the ground. She picked it up. It was a small shawl, one her mother used to wear. It still smelled like rice fields and guava leaves. She clutched it to her chest. Miko, she said slowly, what if my mother isn't dead? Lyra, wait, he said, standing. We buried her. You saw her. But what if what we saw wasn't her real body? She turned to him, tears in her eyes. What if the one who died was never my mother at all? The idea burned into her mind. What if everything she knew was a lie? What if her family had been hiding the truth? Not just about the Aswangs, not just about the curse, but about who she really was. Suddenly, she remembered something. A necklace. Her mother used to wear it. An old pendant shaped like a half-moon. She never saw it again after the burial. She rushed to the corner of the hut, to her Lola's old chest. She dug through dried leaves, beads, scraps of paper, until she found it. Cependant, but it wasn't just a necklace. When she held it up, it glowed faintly. A half-moon. Lyra gasped. She reached into her own pocket, pulled out her mutia, the small orb she always carried. It was shaped like a half-circle too. She pushed the two together. Click! They became one, and a bright light exploded in the room. Miko shielded his eyes. The light formed into a small figure, a floating spirit made of smoke and stars. It had no face, just a glowing outline. I am Tala, it said, voice like wind and bells. You have awakened the truth. Lyra stepped back. What truth? The spirit hovered closer. You were born not only of blood, but of balance. Half light, half shadow. Your mother was of the guardians. Your father, of the cursed. Lyra's heart stopped. What? The battle is not just with the Aswangs. It is with yourself. You are the gate. Miko stepped forward, weak. What does that mean? The spirit turned to him. When the door fully opens, she will either close it or become it. Lyra's knees gave out. She fell to the floor. I don't want to be the door, she whispered. But you already are, the spirit said, fading. The enemy knows it. That is why they are coming. The light vanished. Silence returned. Miko sat beside her. Lyra, what do we do now? She couldn't answer, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't just scared of the enemy. She was scared of herself. And in the distance, the red door pulsed again. The night was thick with silence, yet Lyra could feel the world screaming beneath it. The air no longer carried the coolness of the forest. It was heavy, still, as if the entire land was holding its breath for what was coming next. Every bird had gone quiet. Even the insects had disappeared. The trees stood frozen, like they, too, feared what would unfold. The red door had fully opened. From miles away, Lyra could see it glowing like a wound in the earth. Smoke and shadow danced around it. The creatures had returned, Aswangs, twisted spirits, and things without names. They circled the door like priests waiting for a ritual, and at the center stood her, the other Lyra, her twin in darkness. They called her Dalim Na Lyra, Shadow Lyra. She didn't speak. She didn't move, but her presence echoed louder than thunder in Lyra's mind. I can't face her, Lyra whispered, gripping her mutia. Her body trembled not just from fear, but from doubt, from the growing whisper inside her heart. What if she was meant to be that version? Miko, still pale from his infected wound, touched her shoulder. You were born from both sides, yes, he said, but you still choose who you are. His words burned gently, like candlelight in her soul. But what if I choose wrong? Lyra asked. Then let your heart choose for you, he answered. Not your fear. Suddenly, the ground rumbled. The first wave had arrived. Creatures rushed out of the forest, some leaping from trees, some crawling from beneath the soil. They shrieked, hissed, wailed, like a nightmare made of bone and fire. Lyra and Miko ran to the old ceremonial ground, where the circle of salt and herbs had been prepared. The village was already half abandoned, but some elders remained, chanting prayers under their breath. "Defend the circle!" shouted the albulario, raising his cane that glowed faintly with protective light. The battle had begun. Lyra joined the chant, her voice rising with the others. As the Aswangs crossed the barrier, some burned into ash. But others were stronger, clever. They began finding cracks in the circle. One of them, huge, muscular with glowing red eyes, grabbed a young Mangagamot and flung him across the field. Lyra ran to him, eyes blazing. "No more," she whispered. She held the pendant, now whole, combined from her mother's moon and her own Mutia. It began to glow brighter than ever before. Suddenly, the spirit Tala appeared again, fainter, flickering, but still there. "You must confront her," it said. "Your shadow, not with hatred, but with truth." "I don't understand." Lyra could eat, but she was already running. The forest burned in places. The red door loomed closer. Shadows parted for her like they recognized her, like they belonged to her. And waiting at the foot of the glowing gate was Delim na Lyra. She smiled cold quiet. "You finally came," she said. Her voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. "I'm not like you," Lyra said firmly. "Not yet," the other answered. "But you will be, once you see it all." And suddenly, they were inside the red door. The world outside vanished. They stood in a strange, dark space. Floating mirrors surrounded them again, but this time they moved, showing flashes of past and future, pain and joy, lies and truths. Lyra saw her mother, alive, running through the forest with her as a baby, then hiding her in a cave, then screaming, being dragged into the shadows. "No," Lyra said, shaking. "She didn't abandon me. She tried to protect you," said the shadow Lyra. "But the curse found her anyway." And then another image, her father, not a man, but a shadow figure cloaked in light. Neither good nor evil, just ancient. He gave a mutia to her as a baby and disappeared. "You are the doorway between two worlds," said the shadow Lyra, her voice softening. "You're not meant to destroy us. You're meant to choose." Lyra's head spun. "Choose what? To let us in, or to seal us out forever? Either path ends a world." Suddenly, the mirror shattered, and the shadow Lyra attacked. Blades made of smoke and light clashed. Lyra dodged barely. Her own weapon, formed from the glowing pendant, countered in a flash of white fire. They battled in silence, each strike louder than any scream. But as they fought, memories began to bleed into the space. Lyra's childhood, her pain, her laughter with Miko, her Lola's voice telling bedtime stories, the smell of rice in the morning. She screamed, not from pain, but from memory. And in that moment, she understood. This wasn't a battle to kill. It was a battle to remember. She let go of her weapon. Her enemy raised her blade. But Lyra didn't move. Instead, she spoke. "I forgive you." The shadow Lyra hesitated. "I see you," Lyra continued, tears falling. "You are part of me. My fears, my anger, my pain. But I am more than that. I am my mother's hope, my village's strength. I am love, and I choose that." The red door began to flicker. The shadow's blade fell, and slowly she dissolved. Not in pain, in peace. The mirrors returned, but now they were whole. The space glowed, white and gold, with streaks of red slowly fading. Lyra stood alone now, holding the whole pendant. The door pulsed once more, then began to close. Outside, Miko watched from the edge of the forest as the creatures began to retreat. Some crumbled, others screamed and vanished, and some simply bowed their heads and melted back into the earth. The sky turned lighter. Not day, but a kind of calm twilight. Then Lyra emerged. Her clothes burned at the edges, her eyes filled with exhaustion. But she was alive. Miko ran to her. She smiled weakly. "It's over," she said. He looked behind her. The door was gone, but in its place a small flower grew. Bright white, unmoving even in the wind. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked at the horizon. "I don't know," she answered. "But I know who I am now, and I know what I have to protect." As they walked back to the village, hand in hand, the ground felt warmer. The trees leaned away again. Birds returned. Life began to hum. But as they reached the edge of the path, a voice whispered, faint, distant. This was only the first door. Lyra turned, eyes narrowing. There, in the distance, a faint second glow. Lyra stood quietly, staring at the small white flower that had bloomed where the red door once stood. It swayed gently in the breeze, unaffected by the scars left on the land around it. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of everything she had just faced. She had survived. The village had survived. But she knew nothing would ever be the same. Miko walked beside her, limping slightly from the wound he had taken days ago. But there was peace in his face now, tired but peaceful. They didn't speak for a while. They just stood, side by side, breathing in the silence of a world that had nearly been swallowed. Back in the village, people were beginning to return. Slowly, cautiously. Houses were still damaged, and some of the older trees bore blackened bark where dark magic had burned through. But life was returning. Chickens clucked again in broken coops. Smoke rose from kitchens. The air smelled of soup, soil, and hope. Lola Miney, though weakened, sat beneath the bolete tree, gently whispering prayers of protection. When she saw Lyra approach, her old eyes shimmered. "You came back," she said, voice soft but steady. Lyra nodded. "The door is closed." Lola Miney motioned for her to come closer. "Lyra Kineth, you carry more than the blood of this village now," she said. "You carry the memory of the war, and the peace that followed." Lyra bowed her head. "But it's not over, Lola. I saw it. Another light, far away." Lola Miney touched her cheek gently. "Then you'll be ready when the time comes. Because now you know who you are." That night, the village lit candles. Not for mourning, but for remembrance. They placed them along the river, letting the flames float slowly, silently, as the water carried them forward. Some of the children played again, laughing. Others stared at Lyra with a kind of wonder, whispering her name like a prayer. Miko handed her a warm drink and sat beside her by the fire. "So," he said, watching the flames flicker. "What now?" Lyra stared into the fire. "I don't know. Maybe I finally get a rest. Maybe not." He smiled. "You'll never really rest, you know. You've become part of something ancient now." She laughed quietly. "Don't remind me." For a moment, silence again. But it wasn't the heavy kind anymore. It was the kind that follows healing. Then she turned to him, serious. "Miko, I saw something inside the red door. I saw our village, far in the future. It was gone." Miko's smile faded. "Gone." Lyra nodded slowly. "Not burned. Not destroyed. Just forgotten. Overgrown. Like we were never here." He frowned, thoughtful. Maybe that's what the shadow wanted all along. Not just to destroy the present, but erase the past. Lyra gripped the pendant around her neck. "Then I have to keep remembering. We all do. Our stories. Our people. The light and the dark." In the following days, life returned fully. Crops began to grow again. The cursed lands near the forest began to heal, slowly but visibly. The whispers of fear faded, replaced by stories of Lyra's battle, told around fires, sung in soft lullabies. Lyra helped rebuild the small schoolhouse, where she had once sat quietly, drawing stars in the margins of her notebook. She found old drawings still tucked inside the walls, of forests, moons, and creatures. She added a new one, a girl standing in front of a glowing door, holding a light in her hands. One afternoon, she returned to the place where her mother once hid her. The cave was still there, moss-covered, hidden by vines. She stepped inside, the light from her pendant guiding the way. It was quiet, but there was something left behind. A small carved box, sealed with dried herbs and cloth. She opened it slowly. Inside, a letter. My dearest Lyra, if you are reading this, then you've already walked a path I once feared for you. Forgive me for hiding you. I loved you more than anything, and I only wanted you to grow without fear. But the darkness in our blood could not be buried forever. You are not cursed. You are chosen, not to fight, but to understand, to balance. The shadows will always come, Anik. But light is not the absence of darkness. It is what makes it bearable. Keep your heart open. That is your real gift. Love. Inang Lyra wept softly, pressing the letter to her chest. She stayed there a long time, just letting her mother's words settle into her bones like sunlight. When she came out, the sky was gold and purple. A new day ending. But she felt something else. A presence. Tala. The spirit shimmered faintly beside the rocks. You did well, Anik, it said. But you are right. There are more doors. Lyra nodded. Will I face them alone? Tala smiled. Never alone, but not always with the same people. Will I change? You already have. She looked out at the trees, the horizon. Will I forget? No, Tala whispered. Because you remember not just with your mind, but with your heart. And with that, the spirit vanished into the light. Days turned into weeks. The land healed. The story spread of Lyra the girl who faced her shadow, of Miko the friend who never left, of a village that survived. But one morning, as Lyra fetched water from the stream, something caught her eye. A shell. Not just any shell, but one marked with the same rune her pendant bore. She picked it up slowly. It was warm, and in that moment, she knew. Another door had opened. Somewhere else. For someone else. But maybe someday for her again. She smiled, not with fear, but with peace. Because she was no longer just a girl hiding from the dark. She was its keeper, its challenger, its balance. And no matter how many doors opened, she would be ready. The end